What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So as y'all know, I have been going back playing older games recently like Need for Speed Shift, Need for Speed Pro Street. I even got on Need for Speed Carbon and stuff like that. So I've been going back kind of revisiting these games. And I was like, okay, well, there's one game I really never got to play back in the day that I really should try now. And, maybe see how the game is because I never got a chance to play it. That is going to be Need for Speed Shift 2. Now, this is also going to come from somebody who absolutely loved Need for Speed Shift 1. In fact, guys, I would probably say that was one of my top Need for Speed games I played. Like, I'm not saying it's going to be the best one out of all of them, but I did have a good enjoyment out of it. Like, I would say the game is going to have its flaws here and there, which we all do know every single game does. But I would say Need for Speed Shift was pretty dang solid for the most part, at least for what they were trying to do back in 2009. But if we're going to fast forward around 2 years later, we're then going to get Need for Speed Shift 2. Now, right off the bat, when I was starting to play this game, or I did hear about it, I ended up finding it in a store. I did end up finding like a random disc. It was going to be in a small package. It was legit $5. It was kind of hard for me not to buy this, and I was also planning on buying it. So I saw it, I'm like, all right, let me get this, let me try it out. I was going to play this, make a video on it anyway. This is one of the games I wanted, and I kind of had high expectations for it. The only issue with that, though, is upon first glance and playing the game, guys, okay, this is probably going to sound a bit insane, but I'm going to say this right off the bat. I feel like in some areas, Shift 2, to me, at least was going to be a downgrade. Now, the reason why I say that, for one, I know I'm playing this on the PS3, but I've also heard that people on the PC have said the same thing, unless you do end up modding the game or something like that for it to look better. I think we can probably all agree the overall graphics on Need for Speed Shift, man, like, to be honest, I don't think it looks that good, man. I think the graphics in the game were actually a bit, honestly, it was, I guess the easiest way to say it is it was legit worse than Need for Speed Shift 1. And the reason why that confused me is I'm looking at Need for Speed Shift 2 going, okay, so this game is legit 2 years later. It's going to have some upgrades to it. I would say the car list is much better. There is going to be more vehicles in the game. There's a lot of events and stuff like that. We all also do know Need for Speed Shift 1 had a lot of events. And in fact, I would say it was probably similar to Shift 2, even though this game probably had more events in it. It is going to have more cars and stuff. But the graphics, though, guys, I gotta admit, I do understand, again, this game is from 2011. I'm not thinking it's going to look like a new game. But can I ask you all a question, though? How does Need for Speed Shift 1 look better than Need for Speed Shift 2, bro? Does someone want to explain that one to me? Because I really did not understand this. Like, when you're racing in the map itself and you look over, you're looking at the trees or looking at, like, the out areas of the map itself. Some of the trees and stuff are pretty much going to look like almost like pixelated, like Roblox, Minecraft type of trees, or they're almost like they're not going to be loaded in when looking at the trees, or like basically any outer area. Also, I feel like some of the cars do not look all that great. And I do feel like the car models and stuff like that were going to be off and all that. Like, I don't know if I'm tripping out, but I think a lot of people can agree that Shift 2 is going to look worse than Shift 1. And I was curious on this. Like, I was playing through Shift 2, guys. I was looking at stuff going, okay, you know what? Let me go log on to, like, a forum. Let me see what everybody else thinks of Need for Speed Shift 2. Let me see what they think of Need for Speed Shift 1. Now, there is going to be a few sides of it. Some of them are choosing the second game to be better than the first one. Some are also saying the first game is better than the second, and to be honest, I gotta take the second answer there. I actually really like the first game way more than the second, which I'll get into more of the reasons why here in a second. But for me, though, I feel like the graphics are probably going to be part of it. Now, I understand you could probably argue and go, well, Blocked, you are playing older games, man. I don't think you should be focusing on graphics. And to be honest, every game I've played so far, whether that's going to be Pro Street, Need for Speed Carbon, which, mind you, that game came out in 2006. I think Need for Speed Pro Street was 07, something like that. We also had MCLA in 2000, and I believe it was 8. So yeah, these games are obviously going to be fairly old. And here's the thing with that, though. When I was also thinking about this in another aspect, don't you normally expect the newer said game to probably look better than the old one? Now, I would probably guess and say that maybe they were trying to add other stuff, maybe more racetracks, maybe more vehicles. Maybe that was something that contributed to the overall downgrade of the graphics and stuff in the game. But I would say that was one thing I was definitely noticing about Need for Speed Shift 2, basically right off the bat when I played it. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say that's going to be a terrible thing because games with bad graphics and stuff like that can be very fun. But with that, though, if you are noticing a big difference or like a drop in the said physics in that game compared to the first game that you might have loved or played a lot, you are most likely going to go, okay, so this was obviously going to be a downgrade here. what other areas in that said game did they end up making downgrades, or they probably maybe cut corners on or something. And that was kind of something I was thinking about a lot, and I did want to go on the forums and see if other people thought about it. And it does turn out, well, a lot of players are also like, yo, this game definitely took a graphics hit and stuff. You'd probably think seeing a second game in the racing series, you'd probably most likely expect it to look better and be better. But for some odd reason, for every step forward they most likely did, they ended up going a step backwards. Which is funny because in a lot of the new games, it's also going to be a fairly big trend there. So it's kind of odd how seeing that in Shift 2 from Shift 1 was very weird to me. But there's also one other thing I did want to mention, the aspect of the game, guys, that I gotta admit I was not a big fan of. This is also something I've been seeing pop up a lot, and that is going to be the handling slash the physics. Now, hear me out for a second here, because I do know you're probably going to be like, no, bro, that is a skill issue. But here's the thing, I was a huge fan of Shift 1. I do understand that game for people wasn't the best thing ever. You'd have like hopping sometimes, or certain tracks the car wouldn't grip right. Funny part is I did experience some of the hopping in the game, but to be honest, it really wasn't a big issue to me. And I was also really enjoying the game. I was looking at stuff on there going, okay, well, yeah, we can agree sometimes the physics might be a bit wonky. Sometimes the cars might hop in certain areas, or you might notice some weird things going over tracks and all that in the game, but that was honestly nothing compared to what I did end up experiencing here in Shift 2. For some odd reason, I don't know how to explain the handling in this game. It almost feels like the cars are basically not gripping like you think they would, or probably you probably think they should grip for that matter. They're almost going to be like sliding, or almost like a floaty type of physic, I guess. And I would say for a racing game that's probably trying to compete back in the day with something like Gran Turismo, this probably wasn't the greatest way to do it. If we are looking at certain aspects of something like Need for Speed Shift 2, you are probably looking at this game going, okay, so it is going to be a track-focused racing game. It isn't going to be on the simulator side, because again, that's going to be like the Gran Turismo, Forza Motorsport or something. But on this game, though, I would say players might end up looking at this going, okay, well, this is going to be on the arcadey side, and I would almost necessarily not say it's going to be on the sim side, which I think that's probably what they're aiming for. But the thing is, though, man, if you're going to have arcade type of physics and they're still not going to be that great, a lot of players are probably not even going to do a second look on this game, and that was something I also thought about. I was playing through Shift 2, and I was like, bro, I gotta admit, like, I was talking to my friend about this. I was like, dude, I'm gonna be real. I am not a fan of this game. He's like, well, I did end up hearing like people back in the day talking about Shift 2, saying they didn't really like the physics on it, and that was one of the biggest complaints ever. So again, I went, okay, well, let's ask Google what people think about the physics, and it kind of turns out they were basically saying the same thing I was. They were like, yo, the physics in this game are kind of terrible. Now, on some sides of that, I would say people did kind of like it. Like, I'm not hating on the game or stuff like that, because if you do enjoy it, that is awesome. But I just could not get into this game and really enjoy it like I was in Need for Speed Shift 1. There's just something about the way the cars feel. I do not like it. I felt like my cars grip more in Need for Speed Shift 1. And then here on Shift 2, I'm trying to like battle the corners, the car would slide out. And on the other side of that, I'd also feel like my vehicle's kind of unstable, or like I try to go around the corner, I'm like, okay, can I do it? How's the car going to react and stuff? I just wasn't a huge fan of that. And the last thing I did want to add on to this, guys, and probably one of the most frustrating things about Shift 2 that I found at least, and this is also coming from somebody who has never played this game ever, by the way, in the past. This is the first time I've ever played Shift, so you could basically look at it like almost 14 years later. I was playing this, and anybody else notice when you run into like an AI racer or something that you basically get legitimately stuck on them, or is that just me? Like, if you pretty much drive into one of the AI, you barely touch them, you legit get stuck. Now, I don't know if this is going to be a realistic thing, because I don't remember it being this terrible in Need for Speed Shift 1. But my goodness, though, in Shift 2, man, if you're trying to pass somebody, or you're trying to go around them and you barely touch them, you might get stuck. Then you're probably going to crash into something else, so you hit them, and then you pretty much both go into the wall or something. This was happening to me quite a bit on some of the tighter tracks. I would try to get around them. I'd end up barely hitting them. We end up getting stuck or something. I touch them, I get stuck, or I like hit them because they break too early. And I do understand you could probably get around them, and some of it might be like a skill issue type of thing. I understand that, but my goodness, like trying to pass some of the other racers, you're probably then going to get a bit nervous, because you might find a tight corner and maybe try to get around them. They might end up turning into you, and then boom, you're most likely going to get stuck on them. That's going to be a great time. So I'd end up trying to find better ways to pass them, trying to find different corners and stuff. and in some areas that did honestly make the game a bit more frustrating and stuff like that, which I think everybody can agree with. Now, a few things I did want to talk about, at least on the positive side. I do understand, guys, that yeah, Shift 2 is not going to be perfect, but there is something I did like about it, which is, from what I saw, probably going to be the big thing they tried to sell on the game itself, which is going to be like the cockpit, or I guess you could say the helmet cam, is going to be pretty dang awesome. Like, I gotta give credit on it. Racing at nighttime in the cockpit view with the helmet cam, like the guy will like pretty much look into the corner and stuff like that, which I found that to be a very cool feature. Definitely something we do not see in like newer games and stuff like that, or something I really haven't seen in pretty much any other game for that matter, I would say, at least when it comes to like the simulator type of thing. The overall helmet cam, I gotta say, is a pretty dope thing. But here's the problem with that though. If you were going to base the entire game around it, or at least having something like that as the biggest selling feature, don't you think the other areas should also be pretty dang good? I mean, and I guess a better example of this is probably going to be along the lines of, well, if they were going to market that as the entire cockpit view helmet cam thing, maybe they should also make sure every other area of the game is also going to be liked by many people. And some people are going to see the cockpit thing being very cool, which I gotta admit, guys, an awesome thing in the game. If you're going to turn your HUD off or something, do a nighttime race, or basically racing in most of the vehicles, and that helmet cam is pretty dang amazing. And that was probably one of my favorite things about Shift 2, though. When I then probably would go into the third person camera, race around, I then start thinking about the physics and stuff, or I drive different cars going around corners, or seeing the way the cars handle. And right then and there, I was like, you know, I am not a fan of this. Like, yeah, the cockpit thing looks good, but my goodness, other areas of this game really do feel like a downgrade compared to Shift 1. But besides all of that, I could probably keep rambling on and stuff, guys. I would like to know your thoughts on Need for Speed Shift 2. Did you like this game, or did you more pretty much prefer Shift 1 over Shift 2 Unleashed? I'm probably going to guess right now and say many players probably like Shift 1 over the second one, at least from what I have been seeing online, looking at forums and stuff. Everybody does seem to be in agreement that the first game seemed to be better than the second. While yes, the second game did of course take some great strides forward, it also went multiple steps backwards. And I feel like a new game coming out in a series shouldn't go backwards in multiple steps, but obviously going forward should be the main goal there.